Hi, and welcome to the Query Doctor's first lesson in how to write a query. Today, we're just going to be focusing on the middle part of your query. We're only going to be focusing on the blurb today. For today's lesson, I did a mock-up of John Knoll's literary masterpiece, a separate piece, and it was published in 1959. Doesn't matter if you read the story or not, it's a beautiful story, but we're just using this as an example today. And let's jump right in. Gene Forrester returns to his alma mater, Devon School, in 1957, 15 years after graduation. In the summer of 1942, when he was 16, he struggled with complex feelings toward his best friend, Finney. Gene is quiet and intellectual, while Finney is outgoing and effortlessly athletic. Yet, the two share a close bond. But as the war looms and tensions mount, their friendship begins to unravel. Finney creates a super suicide society, a secret club that involves jumping from a towering tree into the Devon River, a symbol of youthful daredevilry. Gene, in a moment of envy and internal turmoil, shakes the branch during one such jump. Finney falls and is permanently crippled. This accident sets in motion a series of events that forces Gene to confront his guilt and the darker aspects of his character. After Gene confesses to Finney what he has done, Finney suffers a second fall down a steep marble staircase, which leads to a failed operation and Finney's death. Gene enlists after finishing school and grapples with a world at war as well as his internal battles. He struggles to understand the nature of his own feelings for Finney and a devastating revelation about the true cost of friendship and wounds that can never fully heal. Not bad, right? So how did we get this, right? I guess the question is, how do you distill an entire novel into a 200, 300 word blurb, right? And that's why it's so hard. Well, you can hire a professional like the Query Doctor to do it for you. And I still recommend you do that. But we're going to give away some of our secrets today. We're going to show you exactly how we come up with this part of the query, okay? And even then, this could use a little polish. I'm not saying this is a perfect one, but it's pretty good, and it gives us a lot to work with. So how do we get here, okay? Well, let's break it down, okay? A query is so many parts, right? Okay, I'm gonna write it over here. So you got your who, okay, who's in the story, all right? You've got your where and when, if that's important, okay? In the story, it's World War II. There's usually, in every story, some sort of inciting incident, or turning point. Then there is a journey. Okay. Or something that the characters build or create together. Okay. There's stakes. Okay, we'll talk about those, internal and external usually. And then there is a final test or a path to resolution. Okay. That's it, okay? Well, my book is fantasy. My book isn't a literary genre. My book is YA. My book is, gay romance, whatever genre your book is, okay? Nonfiction is maybe something different. That's a book proposal. But if your book is fiction, okay, doesn't matter what genre it is, we can break it down. I'm gonna show you how. Okay. So this is it. Who, where, when, inciting incident, turning point, the journey, the stakes, final path to resolution. 6 things that go into every query blurb. Okay. We'll start with the who. Okay. That's your protagonist. Okay. That should be easy. Every story has a protagonist. Well, my story has an ensemble cast, or what about Lord of the Rings, or what about dual point of view? Your story has one protagonist, okay? Even if it's like an ensemble cast, like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or whatever, there's always still one character, right? Frodo Baggins, that's your main character, okay? Dual point of view, yes, you can have two protagonists. It usually leans more towards one, I'll argue. But, if we need to, we can insert that second protagonist. Although, just for simplicity's sake, let's just stick to one protagonist. For today's example, we're just going to stick to one protagonist. Maybe we'll do a separate lesson on dual protagonist. Okay, so that's your protagonist, okay? Who else should go into this? Okay, well, it's the most important relationship that the protagonist has, okay? Sometimes it's a love interest, okay? Not in this one particularly. It's a friend, okay? So it would be Finney, Jean, Finney, okay? Two most important characters in the story. Other stories, it could be, the prince. Other stories, it could be a parental figure, a mentor, okay? So there's usually one relationship in that story that's most important to that character. Okay? And then we're going to add one more to the who person, to the category. Okay? That's your antagonist. Okay? Your Darth Vader, your Sauron on Mount Doom. Well, what if your story is like a literary story like this? What's the antagonist there? Trauma, okay, guilt, grief, inner demons, okay? All right? Your blurb should have shouldn't really mention more than 3 people in the entire blurb, okay? You mention your protagonist, you mention the most important relationship to that protagonist, and if the antagonist is in the form of a person, you mention that. Don't mention a cast of thousands, okay? Just stick to 3 or 2, and then whatever the antagonist is, whatever form, okay? Here's another hint. What's the first word in the blurb here? Jean Forrester. That's our protagonist, right? Jean Forrester, protagonist. Your blurb should usually start, the first word in the blurb should usually be the protagonist's name, okay? In this case, Jean Forrester, Frodo Baggins, Luke Skywalker. It's always going to be the first word you mention, okay? So already, now you know how to actually start a query. Jean Forrester, okay? Okay, but where is Jean Forrester? When is Jean Forrester? Okay, Devon School, 1957. Okay, all right. Summer of 42. Okay, that's actually kind of when the majority of the book actually takes place. Although it's kind of a retrospect. It's him as an adult reflecting on the summer of 42. But anyways, just to kind of orient the agent / reader. Okay, Jean Forrester returns to his alma mater, 1957, summer of 42. Okay, so that's your who, protagonist, where, when, okay? He struggled with complex feelings toward his best friend, Benny. Okay, so already, blurb off to a good start. The first word of the blurb was our protagonist, Jean Forrester, okay? Where are we? Okay, are we in a town? Are we in the Enchanted Forest? Nope, we're in the Devon School, okay? Summer of 42, okay? And the person that he has the biggest relationship with in the story is Benny. Just one more thing about the kind of the where and the when, okay? So this takes place during World War II, okay? As the war looms, okay? Important background fact, okay? It's not always going to be the case. Sometimes it's just going to be, modern day city or whatever. But if there is this kind of historical bent to it, make sure you put when it was, what was going on at that time. But again, if it's some more of a fantasy type thing, the Enchanted Forest in the realm of, whatever, okay? But the war looms, that's a pretty important detail, okay? So what happens in the story, okay? So let's talk about the journey that Finney and Jean go on. I'm going to actually move this over here. Okay. When I say the journey, right? Well, what do I mean? Okay. It's can be an actual journey, like point A to point B. Okay. We're going from the Shire to the fires of Mount Doom. Okay. Or it could be something the characters build, like a relationship, you know, boy meets girl, you know, they start to build a relationship, you know, estranged parent and daughter, you know, trying to bridge the gap between all the lost years, whatever it is that they're trying to build, okay? Or they're trying to achieve, okay? A journey, something the characters build. Well, what do we have in here? Finney creates a super suicide society, okay? Make sure you kind of be specific about what that journey is or what the characters are building, okay? He creates a super suicide society. Okay, that's interesting. What is that? It's a club that involves jumping from a towering tree onto the Devon River. Okay, all right, so now we know. So we have our characters, we have our where, when, we have what the characters are building, okay, or what they have built together, you know, their journey, so to speak. Okay, now let's talk about the inciting incident or turning point, okay? Jean shakes the branch during one such jump. That's the inciting incident. Finney is permanently crippled. Okay, that's our inciting incident. So you can open up about this a little bit more, you know, because this incident is really important, and this is kind of where the dominoes start to fall in your story. Okay, it literally says in this query, the accident sets in motion. Okay, I mean, you can use that phrase or anyways, but just make sure you're communicating in some way. Turning point, and this is kind of where things start to ramp up. Series of events forces Jean to confront his guilt and the darker aspects of his character. Jean confesses to Finney what he has done, okay? And then Finney suffers a second fall down a steep marble staircase, which leads to a failed operation and Finney's death, okay? Wow. But guess what? That's not the end of the story, okay? Because what is the antagonist in this story, okay? Remember, it's not a person in this particular story. It's not Darth Vader, okay? It's not the evil queen, you know, evil stepmother, whatever. It's trauma, it's guilt, it's grief, it's inner demons. It's Jean coming to terms with the person he is and the man that he wants to become later on. So even though Finney dies, there's still more story to tell. But that's a pretty big deal, okay? That's a pretty big domino if we're talking about inciting incidents, turning point, and then the dominoes that fall, okay? Another way to think about this is like, think about sort of Indiana Jones, right? Raiders of the Lost Ark, just within the opening scenes. Indy is in the forest and he discovers a temple. He evades a series of traps. First it's like, you know, tarantulas. And then it's like a wall with, you know, spears that if you step on a stone, then you get impaled by the spear. So he evades that, you know, and then, you know, the last thing is like, you know, the giant rolling boulder, right? So each thing sort of escalates, you know, from spider to impaling spear to literally a boulder, right? So if you think about that, right? So it sets in motion a series of events, okay? So first is guilt. You know, then it leads to him confessing to Finney what he's done. Okay. Finney is so upset that it leads him to have a second fall. All right. The guy's leg is already broken. He re-breaks it. It's so severe, he has to have an operation, but guess what? The operation fails, he dies. Okay. So just think about, you know, spider, spear, boulder. Okay. You know, spider, spear, bolder, okay? But we're not at the end of the story, okay? Because the antagonist is about the guilt. So then what happens in the story? Okay, so Gene, after he finishes school, he enlists, okay, with the world at war, okay? So now we kind of see like why this setting was so important, right? Because it doesn't really go into what happened to him at war, but the war is a beautiful backdrop to his inner war, okay? And it makes mention of that, as well as the internal battles. Struggles to understand the nature of his own feelings for Finney, and a devastating revelation about the true cause of friendship wounds that can never fully heal. Do they heal? So here's a question. Do you put the ending of the book in your blurb? Not really, okay? And here's why. You're trying to entice the agent, right? And so we've given away a lot of the story here, okay? We've given away the death of a major character. And again, thinking about the antagonist, right? The antagonist is inner demon, guilt, you know, so sort of a personal type of antagonist, you know. Does Gene ever conquer that antagonist, you know? Or even if he does in part, does he fully, you know? What kind of lens has that given him as a man, as, you know, a soldier? So these questions are going to be answered, you know, when the book is read, right? But we've created enough sort of intrigue here to where we're going to want to know, you know. So do I recommend putting the end in the blurb? You don't need to, is the point, okay? Again, your object is just to entice and just to stick to your protagonist. Where are we? The journey, the inciting incident, turning point, okay? Falling dominoes, okay? Raiders of the Lost Ark, okay? The stakes, okay? We might have glossed a little bit over the stakes, but here are the stakes. He struggles to understand the nature of his own feelings, a devastating revelation of the true cost, okay? So again, these are more internal stakes. There are some external stakes as well. I mean, he has to confess to Finney what he's done. And so that's an external stake, right? Because it happens outside of him and it affects the world outside of him. There's also external stakes, okay? So when we talk about internal, external stakes, okay? And we may just do a separate lesson on this later, but you can kind of get an idea about what we're talking about when we say stakes, okay? And then the final test, path to resolution. In this one, it's not the staircase to Mount Doom where he throws the ring in, or does he? He has to make a choice to throw the ring in. Spoiler alert, he does, but it's kind of, Gollum helps him out. But anyways, but in a separate piece, the final test, path to resolution, is his struggle to understand the nature of his own feelings. That is the final test, okay? And again, you don't have to give away the outcome of that. It might be more interesting for us not to know. So that's it. So this is how you do a blurb, okay? And I'm just gonna flash back here to these steps, okay? The 6 steps, the who, the where, when, the journey, your inciting incident, you can call it a turning point, you can call it the falling dominoes, Raiders of the Lost Ark, whatever. Then you have what's at stake, internal and external, and usually in every genre, there's both, okay? You talk about the internal stakes. Is he gonna go mad? Is he gonna be, you know, just forever grief-stricken, whatever? And then the, you know, the external stakes, you know, what's gonna happen to the world outside of him, you know, based on the choices that the protagonist makes. And then you have your final test, path to resolution. Visit the Query Doctor. If you want to check out some of our deals, right now we're running a promotion where we're going to do a free query review, okay? That means if you've written a query, submit it to us, we'll take a look at it, we'll make some critiques and edits and feedback, okay? $50 value, folks. It's free, no reason not to do it. and check out some of our other services as well. And thanks for joining. Please mark in the comments what else you'd like to see if you have any questions about today's lesson.